Let me start by introducing our guest today. Saskia joined our Los Altos Police Department on June 3rd of this year as Chief of Police. She brought more than 21 years of experience in policing to Los Altos, most recently serving as the police captain of the Administrative Services and Investigations Divisions for the Santa Clara Police Department. She oversaw 70 sworn and professional staff and managed a budget of $36 million. As a police captain of the Santa Clara Police Department, Saskia championed officer and professional staff well-being by creating and leading an employee wellness committee. She implemented a diverse set of programs to provide comprehensive support and resources for physical, mental, emotional, financial, social, and occupational wellness. These initiatives included a dedicated peer support team, fitness classes, health screenings, educational presentations, and healthy meal options. In her 2 decades serving the Santa Clara community, Saskia steadily rose through the ranks, holding various positions, including undercover narcotics detective, temporary holding facility sergeant, sexual assault detective, field training sergeant, and taser sergeant. A Los Altos native, Chief Lagergren expressed her deep commitment to the Los Altos community when she assumed a new position. This is a quote: "I am both honored and humbled to lead the Los Altos Police Department. Having grown up in the community, I have a profound appreciation for its unique character and values. I am eager to collaborate with the City Council, city staff, and all members of the community to ensure Los Altos remains a safe place to live, work, visit, and play." Saskia holds a master's degree in business administration from Loyola Marymount University and a bachelor's degree in business administration from Furman University, where she played Division I softball. Additionally, she is an alumna of St. Francis High School. She also graduated from the Executive Leadership Institute at Drucker School of Management at Claremont Graduate University and earned her Executive Leadership Certificate from the California Police Chiefs Association. We're very pleased that you've joined as Chief of Police, and I will now ask you a series of questions. Oh, I'm sorry. You were going to give your presentation. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Yeah, I just was asked to come speak to the group and just tell you a little bit more about myself, my background, and then my vision for the Los Altos Police Department. I'm extremely excited to be back in my hometown in Los Altos as the chief. It all started basically back in 1975 when my parents bought their house in Los Altos. My mom still lives here in the house that I grew up in. I just loved growing up in a community where it was safe to rollerblade around town and safe to stay out till after dark. I loved going to, summer camp at Covington School and participating in the summer reading program at the library over here in Los Altos. I was a complete nerd back then. I used to read like 50 books every summer. So I really loved reading the Hardy Boys mysteries. So that's probably what sparked my interest in law enforcement. I have a lot of fond memories growing up in Los Altos, attending, Festival of Lights parades, the pet parades, riding my bike to Rancho Shopping Center to spend my allowance on baseball cards, playing on the 1990 Kansas City Royals Little League baseball team. It was a great community to grow up in. As mentioned, I attended local schools. I went to Loyola for a couple years and then moved over to Canterbury Christian School over on El Monte. Then I went to Block Junior High and then eventually to St. Francis. There was a lot already mentioned in my bio. So as you know, I went to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, where I got my bachelor's degree in business administration. And then I moved to Los Angeles and got my MBA at Loyola Marymount University. I was about halfway through my MBA when I realized in my 20s, I didn't want to be sitting behind a desk for 60 hours a week. And that was probably the direction I was headed. So I happened to go on a ride along with a family friend who worked for the San Jose Police Department. And as soon as I went on the ride along, I was hooked and I knew that law enforcement was the career for me. Absolutely loved it. I just really wanted a career where I could make a difference and serve people in need, really give back to the community. And, I was looking for a job that was different every day, something that was exciting. And then having been an athlete my whole life, one thing that attracted me was just the physical aspect of the job. Also, I might have to, chase after somebody, that kind of a thing. So I liked that there might be a physical aspect to the job. So I applied to the San Jose Police Department, and I figured back then it took about 9 months to go through the hiring process. It was a really, really long, drawn out process. So I wanted to finish my master's degree. That way I would have it to fall back on in the event that law enforcement didn't work out for me. So I applied to the San Jose Police Department while I was finishing my master's, and they actually had a hiring freeze. And so I applied to Santa Clara just as a backup. And as I went through the hiring process with Santa Clara, I realized that was probably going to be a better fit for me. It was a much smaller department, but still a good sized department with a lot of opportunity. And so I got hired by Santa Clara Police Department back in 2003. I went to the Alameda County Sheriff's Office Academy out in Dublin. Then once I graduated from there, I started my field training program at Santa Clara, went through that, and then became a solo patrol officer. And I knew when I started my career, there were two things I wanted to do in my career. I wanted to try to work undercover narcotics, and I wanted to try to work sexual assaults. Other than that, I didn't really know what career path I was going to take or what path I was going to take within the career. I didn't have any aspirations of ever promoting or anything like that. I knew I wanted to work narcotics and I wanted to work sexual assault. So I worked for a couple of years as a patrol officer and then was selected to join the undercover narcotics team. And that was a really interesting assignment. I really learned a lot in that position and got to work a lot of really good cases. And it was it's funny because I was better than all the guys on my team at buying drugs because nobody suspected that I was a cop. They sometimes suspected that the guys were police officers, but back in my 20s, I looked probably like I was about 17 years old. And then being a woman, like nobody thought I was a police officer. So I could buy drugs from pretty much any drug dealer. So put a lot of drug dealers in jail and really learned a lot in my career in that assignment. So after that, I went back to patrol and became a field training officer. And to me, I really enjoy training people and sharing the knowledge that I have. So I really loved that assignment. It's been nice to see, by now, people who have promoted to sergeant, people that I trained and promoting to lieutenant. So it's cool to see kind of that progression in somebody's career, and really you get to have an impact on just the foundation of their career. I did that for a while, and then I took the sergeant's test and got promoted to sergeant. So I worked as a patrol sergeant for a couple of years, and then was selected to oversee the jail and the jail service officers. And after that, I was selected to oversee the sexual assault unit. Within that assignment, I was responsible for investigating all the sexual assaults, all the adult sexual assaults in the city of Santa Clara. And I was also in charge of investigating major crimes like officer-involved shootings and homicides. So really learned a lot in that role as well. Next, I promoted to lieutenant and went back to patrol, because every time you get promoted in law enforcement, you always return back to patrol. So went back to patrol and oversaw 2 different patrol teams. Did that for a couple of years and then was selected as the administrative services lieutenant. So in that role, I oversaw a bunch of different units: the police activities league, the community services unit, school services unit, the training unit, the firearms range. And I also served as the department's public information officer. After that, I promoted to captain and went back to patrol. That was another one of my favorite assignments, because even though I was no longer the one that was the boots on the ground, doing the actual job, I was there to support the men and women who were out on the front lines, out in the community. So I really enjoyed that assignment. And I oversaw about 100 people in that position, because it was all of uniform patrol and the traffic unit and our community response team at Santa Clara PD. After that, I went to oversee the administrative services division again, but just at a higher level at that point as a captain, and then also the investigations division. So that encompasses like property crimes detectives, persons crimes detectives. We had county and federal task force officers, crime scene unit, and forensic coordinator, crime analyst, and the special enforcement team. I was also in charge of overseeing the records unit, and then I was the interim dispatch manager for about 6 months. And as was mentioned in my bio, officer wellness and employee wellness is something that's extremely important to me. You know, I don't feel we can effectively serve the community if our people aren't well mentally, physically, emotionally, financially. So I put a lot of work into that unit, and that's something that I hope to work on at Los Altos as well, and that we already have in the works. Also, training is something that's always been extremely important to me. So throughout my career, I've always tried to seek out training opportunities and find ways to develop myself professionally. So I had the opportunity to attend the Executive Leadership Institute at Drucker School of Management at Claremont Graduate University, and I graduated from that program and also obtained my executive leadership certification through the California Police Chiefs Association. So got a lot of really good training, and I feel like I bring a lot of good knowledge and experience to Los Altos. I'm excited to bring all of that here. You know, it was a surprise to me when Chief Averett was leaving, but it was, for me, it was the perfect opportunity because I had just finished doing a bunch of classes through the California Police Chiefs Association and gotten some certifications. So it felt like the exact right time in my career, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to apply and, you know, potentially come back to my hometown, finish my career here, and serve the community here. So extremely excited to have been selected as a chief, just absolutely honored to have been selected. As the chief, you know, I understand the position of trust that I'm put in, and I don't take that lightly at all. You know, as law enforcement officers, we're held to a higher standard, and the community deserves that from us. You know, I believe in transparency, both within my department and within the community. I believe in accountability, and that starts with me. I'm always going to hold myself accountable. I'm not ever going to do anything that's going to embarrass the department or the city. You know, if I make a mistake, I'm going to own it. I'm going to learn from it and move on. And the same can be said for my department. If we make a mistake, we're going to own it, learn from it, and move on. You know, we're not perfect. We're human beings. We are going to make mistakes. We're going to do the best we can, but we will make mistakes here and there, as I will too. And we just want to make sure that we learn from it and do better the next time. I also believe in community engagement. That's something that's extremely important. You know, I feel like it takes all of us as public servants and community members working together to ensure a safe community. As far as my vision for the department, you know, we have a really good department at Los Altos PD. No matter how good you are, there's always room for improvement. So one of my goals as chief is to really elevate the department, kind of on all levels, elevate the level of service, elevate the training, you know, everything. As I mentioned before, training is extremely important, especially at a small department where, for example, we may not get a lot of robberies. But I want to make sure that my officers are prepared when a robbery does happen. I want them to handle it appropriately and investigate it appropriately and hopefully catch the criminal. So that's where the training becomes super important, to make sure that we're giving our officers the right training in all aspects of their job. So that's something I really want to work on, getting more training, getting better training. Technology is another thing that I really want to try to leverage to help us, like, not only deter crime, but then if the crime happens, to help us solve it. So as you're probably aware, some of the things that we've gotten recently are the license plate reader cameras. Those have helped us find more stolen vehicles than we've recovered in the past. They've given us leads on different investigations to, you know, help us solve crimes. We were approved for drones. So that's something that we're working on getting up and going. We're trying to work on that program right now. There's just a lot of technology out there that can just help the officers do their job more efficiently too. We're looking at an Axon Draft One product, which helps with making report writing more efficient based on the body-worn camera footage from the officer. So we're looking into that. And then we're also looking into some, I guess we'll call them like pursuit mitigation products. There's a product out there called Star Chase that we're exploring right now. Because as you know, police pursuits are extremely dangerous for the public, for the officers. So we try to mitigate that. We have a pretty restrictive pursuit policy where we can't pursue somebody for a property crime. And so the people just get away most of the time. So this Star Chase device is something that could basically put like a GPS tag on a vehicle as it flees from the officers. So that's just something that we're exploring. We're kind of in the early stages of that. But we're just looking for ways where we can still solve the crime and apprehend people. As far as everything else, I really expect high quality service from my staff. I expect them to treat everybody they come into contact with dignity, courtesy, and respect, whether it's a victim of a crime, whether it's a witness, whether it's an arrestee. I expect the same professionalism and the same dignity and courtesy to anyone they come into contact with. That's something that's extremely important to me as the chief. I'm open to change. I really want to find ways to, new ways of doing things, ways to do the job more efficiently. I hate the phrase, we've always done it that way. Because we're kind of at a crossroads in this profession where there are changes that need to be made in law enforcement. So I think we're making some good strides because there were things that we needed to change. So I think we're heading in the right direction with that, but I'm just always open to finding new ways of doing things and hearing from the community what the community wants to see in their police department and how we can better serve you. So I welcome that feedback if and when anybody has any feedback about that, what we can do better. I've mentioned community engagement. That's something that's extremely important. I'm looking to hopefully hire a community service officer who's going to focus on community engagement and crime prevention. So we're about to hire a crime analyst. So they're going to help us have more of the data, more of the statistics about the crime trends and kind of the hot spots where crime is happening to help us provide better service to the community. So hopefully the community service officer that focuses on crime prevention can kind of work together with the crime analyst to see what the trends are and then can proactively do community meetings and other things like that to help prevent some of these crimes from happening. So that's something that I'm hoping to get in the future, is to add a position to do that. And then to be out there just at community events and getting involved more, and then getting more of our officers to go to different events throughout the community. I really want my officers and staff to be critical thinkers and problem solvers, and I really want them to focus on the human side of things, and use their discretion when they can. There is a lot of gray area in police work, and everything's not just black and white. I really want people to use their discretion. I want them to be compassionate and empathetic. It's not always about making an arrest. One of the most impactful moments in my career was just on a simple car stop I made. Probably it was in December, right before Christmas, probably in 2012, 2013, somewhere around then. I pulled over a minivan just for a vehicle code violation. I don't even remember what it was for. I was working midnight shift, and I contacted the driver. It was a gentleman driving, and his wife was in the car, and they had 8 kids in the minivan. So needless to say, not everybody was in the right car seat, much less even a seat at all, like way too many people in the car. And so speaking with him further, I found out that he had a suspended license. So the policy for law enforcement was back then, and still is, that if somebody is driving on a suspended license, you're supposed to impound the car for 30 days. But speaking further with them, he explained to me that the family was currently homeless, and they were living out of 2 motel rooms at the Easy 8 Motel in Santa Clara. And they actually had 10 kids. They only had 8 in the car with them at the time. There were 2 older ones that were back at the motel. So a family of 12 living out of 2 motel rooms in Santa Clara. And he explained to me that he was working 3 different jobs to try to support the family, and some of his jobs were in the East Bay. So I made the decision not to tow the car. I wasn't going to take away his only mode of transportation to get to his job. So I went against the policy, but decided not to tow his vehicle. I did give him a ticket for driving on a suspended license because he did need to get his license taken care of. And driving home from work the next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about that family, all, the 10 kids that they had. It was right before Christmas time. I knew that the family, they probably weren't going to get much, if anything at all, for Christmas. And so the next the next night at work, I went over to the motel because I wanted to talk to the mom. And I spoke with her and asked her if she could give me a list of things that the family needed. And then if she could give me a list for each kid of stuff that they might want for Christmas. And I took that, she emailed it to me a couple days later, and I sat down with my patrol team and told them about the family. And we decided that we wanted to collect some money to try to get some of these things for the family. And we put out a department-wide email asking people for donations for us to try to go be able to buy all these things. And I was overwhelmed with the amount of donations we got. We were actually able to buy literally everything on everybody's list. We ended up buying a ton of extra like Safeway gift cards and gas gift cards that the family could just use, throughout the year. And our team went out and bought everything and wrapped everything up for Christmas. And then we actually got a couple car seats donated from the Target down the street there. And one of the guys on my team dressed up like Santa Claus, which is funny looking back now. He was like 25 years old, but he dressed up like Santa Claus. And we took all the presents and all the diapers and the formula and the jackets and blankets and all the stuff that we bought to the family on Christmas Day. And I'll never forget the looks of joy on the kids' faces. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have gotten much at all for Christmas. And sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about this. That was one of the most impactful moments in my career, is just on a simple car stop like that. I was actually able to connect the mom with somebody in a housing organization. I don't remember which one it was, but they were actually able to get the family housing about a month later. They got them into like a 6 or 7 bedroom house that they were able to rent, and got them off the street, got them out of the motel. And I tell you the story because that was the most impactful moment in my career. I was able to truly have an impact and serve a family in need. That's why I got into this job. It wasn't, a big arrest that I made. That was the most impact. That was the most impact to me. Even though I made plenty of those, but this was what was most impactful to me. And I've carried that my whole career since then. And that is the service and the compassion and the empathy that I expect from the men and women of the Los Altos Police Department. And that's what you can expect from me as the chief. It's just, I really want people to focus on that human side and the service aspect. Obviously, there's a time and a place for making arrests. That's part of the job as well, but that's a small part of the job, especially in a place like Los Altos, where we're not making an arrest every day. It really is serving the community, problem solving, getting people connected with the services that they need for whatever they have going on. Another thing I want to do for the department is I want to put together a strategic plan. That's something that we don't have right now. So I think it's important to have a roadmap of where you're going and how you want to get there. I think it's important for my staff to know that too, because they need to know like what we're working towards. So that's something I'm going to be working on putting together too, over the next year. That's something that we're going to work together as a department, and then work together, bringing community members in to be part of that process as well, because we are here to serve the community. That's why the department exists. So we want to hear from the community, about how we can best serve you and what you want to see from the department. So we'll engage the community in that process as well. So that's kind of my vision in a nutshell and my background. And I guess I'll just open it up to questions, or if you have the questions that you wanted to give me, I can answer those.
Saskia, thank you very much for the great presentation, and especially for the wonderful, impactful story. It really is an example of true service. So thanks very much for sharing that with us. My first question is, at this point in your role as chief of police, what do you view as the police department's #1 priority?
Getting our staffing numbers up, and hiring quality people that are a good fit for Los Altos. So finding the right people to fill our positions, because we're down multiple positions right now. We're down 4 officers, which with a department our size, that makes a big impact, being down that many officers. So definitely staffing is one of the highest priorities.
Thanks. do you believe that crime has, from your, time since June, do you believe that crime has been increasing or decreasing in Los Altos? And do you have any statistics as to especially as to burglary, that you could share with us?
Yeah, so I didn't have time to get statistics on like crime overall, but I did happen to pull the burglary statistics the other day, so I had that information. I actually thought that it had been increasing, but then looking at the numbers, the number of burglaries has actually, we're on pace to have fewer burglaries than we have the last couple years. So it's actually trending down. This is for the residential burglaries because I know that's always a topic of concern for people. I can go over some of the numbers. Like for instance, in 2020, we had 60 residential burglaries. 2021, there were 68. 2022, there were 71. And then in 2023, there were 73. So those were all trending up. This year to date, we had 53. So looking at all the averages that we've had in different months, we're on pace to actually be lower. I can't say that for sure. I can't predict that, but right now we're on pace to actually be lower than we have in past years. And we had fewer burglaries on average per month every month this year, except for a couple of months. I believe it was in April, May, and August. We had just higher than the average for those months. But overall, the burglaries have actually looked like they're decreasing.
Thank you. What do you see as some of the other key law enforcement issues in Los Altos?
Traffic is probably the biggest one. We get the most complaints about traffic. And so one of the unfortunate things, because our staffing is low, is we had to pull the traffic officers that ride the motorcycles, we had to pull them back to patrol. So instead of being out there just enforcing traffic and taking traffic collisions, they're back taking patrol calls for service. So we don't have the whole dedicated traffic unit anymore. We have a traffic sergeant who does those things, but that's only one person. So he does an excellent job, but he has to juggle a lot of things. So once we get fully staffed, one of my biggest priorities is to restaff the traffic unit because I know that's just a big complaint and a quality of life issue for people. So we really want to, I mean, we can have as many laws as we want, but if we don't have people to enforce it, it doesn't do any good. So as soon as I can get the officers back on their motorcycles to do more traffic enforcement and to do more traffic education, we're having a lot of the kids on the e-bikes now and just doing a lot of unsafe maneuvers and riding around with no helmets and riding, two people to an e-bike. So when we get the traffic unit back, that's going to be one of the priorities. And we want to focus on the education first with the kids and then go from there. So that's a big priority. And then some of the other issues are just, we're seeing a lot of fraud cases, just a lot of cyber crime, that sort of thing. So we're trying to put together some things for some prevention of that crime. We want to get some more information out to the community about how to protect yourself and how to not become a victim of some of those crimes because they're getting very sophisticated where it's hard to differentiate between what's a scam and what's not.
Thank you. What are your thoughts about bringing more diversity to the LA Police Department?
I mean, I think that's extremely important. I really want to have a diverse workforce, people with different backgrounds, different viewpoints. Especially it's important in a community, like Los Altos. I think it's important to have just that diverse department. So we're definitely working on that in our hiring and recruiting efforts.
Great. And what are your thoughts about increasing community engagement with the police department?
Yeah, so I think I kind of touched on that a little bit already. That's something I really want to focus on. And like I mentioned, I'm hoping to add another position for a community service officer. So it won't be a police officer, it's a non-sworn community service officer that would help with the community engagement, with the crime prevention, that sort of thing.
Thank you. Do you have information that you can share with us about the results to date of the automatic license plate reader program? And How successful do you believe it has been? I know
I think
you
it's
touched on it a little bit in your presentation.
Yeah, I think it's been successful. I don't have exact numbers. We had looked at some statistics. I probably looked at it about 2 months ago, and I believe we had already made more arrests than we had the previous year. We're on pace. It definitely had recovered more stolen vehicles than we had in past years. So, if anything, at least we've found some more stolen vehicles and returned those to to the rightful owners. But we're going to put together a more comprehensive review of that in the beginning of the year, because we finally just got the last or the final flock camera put up about a week or two ago. It just took a long time to get all of the cameras, um, installed. So now they're finally all installed. And so we're going to do the assessment of the entire program in January. So we'll have more statistics and like exact, success stories and that sort of thing to give to everybody.
That sounds great. As you know, a Los Altos task force voted to no longer have a school resource officer at Los Altos High School. Mountain View High School administrators believe that the school resource officer that they have there has been very beneficial. What are your thoughts about the benefits of having a school resource officer at the high school?
I think it's extremely beneficial. When I was at the Santa Clara Police Department, we had the school resource officers there. I believe we had 4 of them. And they also taught the DARE program. So they were very involved in the schools. I think it's great to do. But the officers need to be in the school for more of having the positive contacts with the kids. They're not there. They should not be there to be like the enforcement side of things. Like they're not there to, arrest somebody for having cigarettes. That's not at all the role. And I think that's what a lot of people think it is. That I think there's a misconception that that's what the officers are in the schools doing, and that they're in there enforcing all these minor violations, which absolutely we would not. That would not at all be the intention of it. It would be more to engage with the kids and build the rapport with the kids and have the positive interactions with them and just build build those relationships with the kids, with the teachers, with the school administrators. It becomes beneficial if you are to have a major case, God forbid there's a shooting or something like that involving high school kids. Then if you have that rapport as a school resource officer that you've built with the kids, they're more inclined to, pass along information. Like somebody's probably going to know who did it. But if you don't have that relationship built with the school resource officer or with the police department, kids may not come forward to give that information. You may just never solve that crime and may never take a dangerous, kid out of that environment. So really focusing on, building those relationships, that would be the intention of it. And I think it's extremely important. I've seen the benefits of it. It's good for the kids to see the officers in a positive light, because we are there to protect and to serve. We do have to enforce the law, but we shouldn't be in the schools to do minor violations. If something major happens, like there were an active shooter or something like that, it would be good to have an officer there who could respond immediately and take care of the situation. So there's definite benefits to having school resource officers in the schools. And obviously they're trained for those sort of things. So you want to find the right fit, somebody who's going to do a good job with the kids and who's going to be personable and be able to build that rapport with them. So, we want to make sure that we select the right officers to do that.
Thanks very much for a comprehensive response. There's been concern in town for many years by a lot of the residents regarding the substandard police facilities. So, not to put you on the spot, but I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
I mean, we need to have a new building. I understand that takes time, obviously, to build one, because even if that was approved right now, it would take probably 5 years till we had the building. And we already need a new one, so things are just going to continue to deteriorate even more, to where over the next couple of years it's going to be even more dire of a need. So we're hoping that that's something that we can get. I mean, we make do with what we have, obviously. We're fortunate to have an extremely supportive community, and we're able to get a lot of really good equipment that we need and get technology that we need. But it would be great if we could have a more up-to-date building too, because that just helps just overall with supporting our mission.
What do you see as the police role in dealing with crime and mental illness?
Well, law enforcement's role would be dealing with crime aspects. Our role shouldn't be dealing with mental health unless obviously there's an immediate threat to somebody else. Like if there's a weapon or a gun or a knife that somebody having a mental health crisis is threatening another person with. At that point, law enforcement has to get involved because there's like an immediate risk to somebody's well-being. Now, if that's not the case and it's just somebody having a mental health crisis, then the police department is not the one that should be the one handling that. That needs to be, mental health clinicians. Obviously, if there's something exigent, like I mentioned, like we have to step in and handle the situation. And that's why we make sure that we train all the officers on de-escalation and they go to classes on mental health. So we're definitely a lot better trained now than we were, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years ago in dealing with that, because we're seeing a lot more of it, and people call the police just because they don't know what resources are out there and they don't know what to do. So for an exigent circumstance where we have to go, we deal with those. But if it's, again, not an urgent situation, but somebody having a mental health crisis, we'll try to connect, if a family member calls in or something, we'll try to provide the correct resources to them so they can call the mental health professionals or call another resource, which is going to be the proper person to handle the situation.
Thanks. That is it for my questions. Chief, thank you so much for a great conversation. And I'd like to now open up the conversation to the attendees for questions. Please raise your virtual hand, and I will call on you in terms of the next up hand raise. Gary Hedden, and remember, please, one question per person and no speeches or pronouncements, please. With that in mind, it happens to be Gary Hedden,
Oh boy, and you put me
the
on the
first
spot
person
here.
asking questions. Question.
Welcome back to Los Altos. FYI, my wife and I bought our house in '75 near Rancher Shopping Center.
Okay.
We have a little something in common there.
Yeah.
I'm very active with Greentown Los Altos. It's an environmental group, and one of the things we promote is bike riding. And we do work at the schools with, say, the WOW program, the Walker Wheels. What else can the police department do to help educate, to get involved with getting more kids on bikes and walking?
So we're, if I understand correctly, we had a program. I can't remember. You might know the name of it. There was a program where an outside company was going to the schools for the bike safety. I don't remember the name of it, but now we've taken that in-house to where the officers are going to be doing that program, because we weren't getting great feedback from the schools. So now that's something that we're working on this year is we've beefed up our bike unit. So we've gotten a lot of new bicycles and we've added some officers to our bike team. So they're going to be going out to the schools hopefully in the spring when the weather's nice to educate the kids and teach them about bike safety. So that's a program that we're working on right now. And then we might look into I know there's some grants available through OTS, through Office of Traffic Safety, where we might be able to get a grant to get helmets for kids that don't have helmets, and then the officers can go and hand those out. So that's something that we might look into doing, because the education piece is extremely important, especially like I mentioned with the e-bikes. We just see the kids do some really unsafe things. And so if we see them now on the street, we try to educate them on needing to wear the helmet and needing to not be going the wrong direction and things like that. So we really need to work. That's something we really need to work with the schools on the education piece.
Good.
Thanks. I just want to mention I live on University Avenue, and there's a pack of 4 or 5 13 or 14-year-olds that are on their e-bikes doing wheelies right near the gazebo, like right in front of the gazebo. And I've tried to politely warn them that that's really unsafe. And one had a helmet, three did not. And their response was a two-letter word that's first word starts with F, second word starts with Y.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought it up. It's definitely a problem, especially on a street with that much traffic as University. So, Penny.
Yeah, I've always been under the impression that making a U-turn or a half U-turn on Main Street to go into a parking space on the other side of the street was illegal, and motorcycle guys have been down there enforcing it for periods sometimes. It's been quite a while. Is it illegal? And I know it's dangerous, but is it illegal?
I don't actually have the answer to that right now. I would have to check the vehicle code because I'm not as well versed now on the traffic violations as I used to be. But I can look that up and I can get that information to you.
Well, more and more people are doing it.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, maybe it's petty, but it just bugs me.
I think I'll check, but I think it's are there lines painted?
Yes.
Oh yeah, they cross right over the yellow lines.
Okay. It's a double yellow line. Okay. Yeah, I don't have that exact answer because like I said, I'm not as well versed with it as I used to be. But I'll check on that.
Deborah, you're mute, unmute.
I just wanted to thank Saskia for we had let's see, in August it was National Night Out, and we had our first neighborhood night out, and a couple of representatives came. I think maybe even two different cars. One came and then later another one did. But anyway, it was really nice to have the police officers and the firemen come to that, and the kids in the neighborhood really loved it, and so did the adults, and they really hung out and talked to us for a while. So just wanted to thank you for that. That's my main
Yeah,
thing.
you're welcome. That's the plan every year. We love it.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
I don't see any other virtual hands up right now. Richard.
First of all, it's a wow on your bio and your background, and thank you very much for coming back to the city. Somebody with your ability and your direction. I missed part of the presentation, your response on the burglaries, but part of that, do you have a investigator inside that's looking at an issue and incident and then being able to pull it apart and try and solve it from there? Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a couple investigators that are working on all the burglary cases and then trying to see if there's any connections between them. And fortunately, we have really good information sharing within the county and within the entire Bay Area. So we share information with other agencies and vice versa. And they send around, bulletins with, say for instance, we get a photo of a vehicle, but it doesn't have the license plate on it, but it was involved in a burglary. That's something that we'll send out to other agencies. And then sometimes somebody in another agency will locate that car. And so we'll share all that information. So it's not only just our detectives working on the cases, but then with that information sharing, we get a lot of leads sometimes from other agencies. So that's super helpful.
Gary, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, question number two. You mentioned the staff shortages. What's the barrier? Why is it so difficult to find staff?
That's a good question. I mean, I think just there's been a change over the last 4, 5, 6 years. Not as many people wanting to get into the profession. We're seeing like a slight change with that. So that's starting, I think, to get a little bit better, where we're seeing more applicants. Just our department in particular, I think it comes down to cost of living. That's the main one in our area here. It's so expensive to live in the Bay Area. No one can afford to live in Los Altos, obviously, if you're just starting out. So that's really a barrier, is the cost of living. So then the pay needs to make it so you can afford to live in this area, because we have people commuting from, very far away. So that's an issue too. And then that becomes, we have for patrol, 12-hour shifts. And so then if you have to stay for overtime, now on top of that, you're having an hour and a half, 2-hour commute sometimes, on both ends. And so that just makes for a very long day, and then fatigue. And, that's something of concern, because then that's gonna affect your performance and your decision making. So those are things that definitely concern me as a chief, is the distance away that our staff is having to live, because of, all those issues. So I think that's just the biggest one.
Well, affordable housing in this area is a challenge, and we're working on it, but it's tough.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for our new police chief? No, I don't see any going once, going twice. I don't see any other questions. So as you know, we end at 9:30, but before we do, a few announcements. Our next meeting will be on Friday, November 15th, from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. again. Please join us for a discussion entitled Imagine Housing on Parking Plazas 7 and 8 with Nick Zorns, Assistant City Manager, City of Los Altos. If you would like to be added to the LACC mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. This email is posted in the chat for your convenience. A big thank you, as always, to the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing LACC with financial and in-kind support. And a big thank you once again to Chief Lagergren for a great discussion today. Thank you so much, Chief, and thanks everybody for joining.
Yes.
And thanks again, and we look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks.